The Legend of Zelda is a very long-running franchise. In fact, at the time of releasing this video, it is 36 years old. And in these 36 years, the Zelda team has produced several different Zelda games, each game being very unique in their own way. You'd be hard-pressed to look at two Zelda games and say they just did a copy and paste job. Sure, there are games that are similar, but they are always different enough so that they can stand out on their own. Over the years, the format of Zelda games slowly became more and more linear, at least in the 3D games, that is, to the point where it started to feel too linear and too hand-holding, until Breath of the Wild changed that. Taking inspiration from the series' origins, Breath of the Wild was a game where you can make your own decisions, and paths were completely up to you as the player. Odds are your experience playing the game is not the same as someone else's. You can immediately go to the final boss, you can stick around and then complete the Divine Beasts, you can unlock all the shrines. If you're crazy enough, you can collect all the Korok seeds if you feel like wasting several hours of your life for a piece of shit. But what really makes this game stand out to me is its world. The world is probably one of the most realistic ones in the series, second to Majora's Mask. In this world, we are introduced to 9 major settlements: Kakariko Village, Hateno Village, Zora's Domain, Goron City, Rito Village, Gerudo Town, Korok Forest, and Lurelin Village, each with their own aesthetics, residents, and culture. But what is more interesting to me is ruins of former settlements. Little bits and pieces of the past that give us clues as to what life was like before the calamity. One of these places being Hyrule Castle Town. Disclaimer, I have not yet played Age of Calamity's DLC purely because I refuse to give this game any more money than I already have, which means I'll have to watch someone else play it online, and right now I don't have the motivation to watch something that makes me want to tear my hair out. So any information about Hyrule Castle Town or anything else I'm about to mention will not be in this video if it's in the DLC. Being the closest settlement to Hyrule Castle, it was quickly destroyed in the early hours of the calamity, and the surviving residents were forced to flee. Now, if you're watching this video, you may be aware that Nintendo did that little thing called announcing the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and then just didn't talk about it for the next 2 years. And in those 2 years, the theorist community has done a lot of speculation and theorizing that Hyrule Castle Town could indeed return, which sounds amazing in my opinion. But alas, in the summer of 2021, Nintendo released a second teaser trailer that still showed a destroyed Castle Town, which a great deal of fans were upset about. At least that's what I observed. And while I do think seeing a rebuilt Hyrule Castle Town would be absolutely amazing, I can see an argument on why it shouldn't be included, and that is what I would like to talk about today. So let's jump into our first point of the video. The thing we have to recognize when discussing Breath of the Wild 2 is there are a lot of unknown variables we have to consider. One of the most important being time. The fact is we still have no idea when this game takes place. It could be 1 or 2 years later, as indicated by Link in Zelda's new attire, and Zelda's shorter hair, but it could also be as little as a few days after the first game. After all, Zelda did say Ruto had stopped working and was going to go investigate it. My point is because we have no idea how much of a time gap there is between the two games, it is entirely possible we do not see a restored Hyrule Castle Town because they simply haven't had enough time to rebuild. Besides, eliminating any threats to the kingdom and its safety will always take priority over construction. Speaking of construction, it has changed a lot in Hyrule over the past 100 years. As you already know, the Great Calamity was a devastating event and wiped out most of the population, including all of Hyrule's carpenters. That's why there haven't been any new towns, with the exception of Terry Town, within the past 100 years. Because the knowledge of carpenting and building was lost, and important monuments that needed to be preserved were done so with crude wooden supports. Terry Town was created using a new technique of building rooms in small boxes that are then stacked on top of each other and mounted to create houses. Good enough for a small town that can bottleneck any attacks and fend them off easily, but for the nation's capital that is right in the middle of Hyrule, I imagine they would want something a lot sturdier that would be able to withstand more attacks. And breaking the fourth wall here, there is absolutely no way Nintendo will have 2 towns with the exact same aesthetic and theme, especially a town as iconic as Castle Town. But let's ignore the 2 points I stated for a moment and look at Hyrule Castle Town and its surroundings, and you'll quickly find my next point. Namely, there is a giant floating castle with malice flying around it with the King of Thieves right next to it. it. Even if they did manage to rebuild the town, it most likely would have been destroyed in the earthquake while the castle was being brought up to the sky. But let's say that the town somehow was left in one piece. The residents still would have left due to the proximity of malice alone. And even if the malice wasn't enough to scare off the residents, Ganondorf's minions sure will. Sure, guardians most likely won't make an appearance again, but this is Ganondorf we are talking about. He's going to have something roaming the land and protecting the area where his stronghold is, whether that's an increase of monsters or something else. And again, we have no idea when the castle rises, but it's widely believed that this happens near the beginning of the game. That is usually where conflict is introduced. I feel like if Nintendo gave us a fully realized Hyrule Castle Town, only to take it away right at the beginning of the game, I can't help but feel like players would feel cheated in some sort of way. It's different in games like Ocarina of Time, because the time travel mechanic allows you to go back and complete anything you might have missed. But we still have no solid confirmation that anything like that will happen in Breath of the Wild 2. And I would like to take a second and talk about the town from a technical standpoint and why we probably can't see it. Now, I would like to preface that I am not a game designer, and my only coding background is a basic understanding of Python and syntax. But even so, I doubt we will be able to see a town like Hyrule Castle Town in Breath of the Wild 2 due to the sheer size of the town. It's different in games like Age of Calamity because the Hyrule Castle Town was designed as a video game level. You don't have multiple different unique NPCs, each with their own unique dialogue, all being loaded at once. And you don't have a large variety of different side quests that can be completed. You have a few main objectives, and that's it. You never come back unless it's for replay purposes. In a game like Breath of the Wild, where you can go anywhere and do basically whatever you want at your own pace, this doesn't work as well. All that stuff I mentioned, a variety of unique NPCs, side quests, unique dialogues, work for smaller, less diverse settlements like Breath of the Wild's main 9 instead of one large settlement like Castle Town. What I mean is in Breath of the Wild's other settlements, you're mainly going to find one type of people. In Hateno, you are mainly going to find farmers, and a small amount at that, saying it's a small town. In Lurelin, you are mainly going to find fishers, etc. The problem with the capital of Hyrule, it has a large number of different types of people. Merchants, normal townspeople, guards, soldiers, prisoners, passing travelers, all being loaded at once. And Breath of the Wild doesn't have the luxury of loading screens to make the illusion of a bustling town, because the entire world is all one map. Can the Switch handle it? Maybe, but judging from the lag of Korok Forest alone, I highly doubt that it can. And just to preface again, I'm not a game designer, so please forgive me if I'm missing anything or got something wrong. I've saved this point for last, but I feel it's probably the most important out of all of them, and that's Princess Zelda. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no doubt that the princess wants to restore her kingdom to its former glory, but I imagine that being around Hyrule Castle Town and Hyrule Castle itself is very hard for her mentally. By that, I imagine Hyrule Castle Town is a reminder of all the people she couldn't save. It's likely a reminder of her friends that believed in her that she let down, a reminder of her father and how he isolated her from everything she loved and cared about, a reminder of all those nights she spent praying at the springs, desperate to awaken her power and wondering what she was doing wrong and why it wasn't working, a reminder of how desperate she was to prove to everyone who thought she was a failure that they were wrong, only for them to be proven true in her eyes. This is of course my interpretation of this, but I imagine that Hyrule Castle Town sparks a lot of regret in the princess, and she likely wonders if she had been able to awaken her power just a little bit sooner, would she have been able to protect everyone? And because of that, I honestly would not be surprised if she just isn't ready to go back to Hyrule Castle Town, and instead will focus on rebuilding other parts of Hyrule first until she is ready. Though I do find find it unlikely we will see Hyrule Castle Town fully restored. I don't think it will serve the exact same purpose as last time. I can imagine stealth missions here for supplies and scouting out Ganondorf's forces, and the few NPCs who are brave enough to get close. And I honestly can't wait to see what Nintendo has in store for this area. And don't take this as me saying there's absolutely no chance we will see Castle Town in Breath of the Wild 2. You may have noticed that I did not include time travel as a factor in this video, and if time travel is in this game, then I think there is a very real chance we could see the town. That is entirely up to the devs. So I would like to ask you, what role do you think Castle Town will play in the sequel? Will it be rebuilt? Will it stay in ruins? What do you think? And what purpose do you think it will serve? I'm sorry that this video is a little different than my normal ones. I wanted to get back into the swing of scripting and editing before I jump back into theories, but they are coming. I hope you all have a very nice day, and I hope you all take care of yourselves. I'm Mass Majora, and I'll see you all later.